with all your skill in the private and the public sector, and now, of course, post-economic crisis, how do you see Sri Lanka panning out in the next 1 year?
Ranta, I am a bit of I'm a bit of optimist, right? Because I think this country, whatever, said and done, this country has resilience. This country is resilient. Why is it resilient, right? Because what I feel is, we are not talking of a economy the size of India. Okay? We are a small country. The space of geographically we are small. The economy is also small, right? And whatever said and done within a very short span of time, without any type of political affiliations, some level of progress has been achieved. Right? Some level of progress has been achieved. Now, what do I see as a silver lining in all of this? I personally is that I feel tourism, right, is the silver lining we have got in this. And I'm optimistic that this is going to come about in the next 1 year, right? And we should push this agenda very, very strongly, right? And also in the next couple of months, I think it'll take maybe a bit longer than a couple of months, maybe close to 6 months, when the interest rates are also coming down, you will see, right? You will see industries, coming back. You'll see private credit growth going up. You see some level of growth taking place, although albeit be slow, right? Put all of this together, I feel that by the end of the year, beginning of next year, you will see, right, some sort of forward movement, right, in the economy. So one approach is you absolutely become a pessimist, right, and say, therefore, I'm not going to do anything, right? I'm just going to take a very pessimistic view of this country. Now, if everyone does that, you're actually contributing, right, in some way, right, to the demise of this country. So I think as business leaders and business people, we have to be optimistic, but of course, manage the risk, right, in whatever commercial decisions what we take, and move forward, right, within these constraints. So I'm a bit of an optimist on this one.
So let me introduce our keynote speaker today. Amazing personality, someone whom I've been knowing for a long time, who has really demonstrated his skill, not in the private sector, but also in the public sector, and someone who has really gone out there and showed how brand Sri Lanka talent is in a global landscape. His outstanding business personality started his career by understanding consumer insights, by joining Lanka Market Research Bureau initially as executive, moved on to being a senior research executive, and then of course he was headhunted by a British multinational, Ceylon Tobacco, as a market research manager. So he got his basics just like every other outstanding business executive, in first of all to understand your consumer and understanding what those insights give you to run business, and that's what he has done. He has excelled, and then top British multinational picked him up as a market research manager, and he went on to become a brand manager, group brand manager of the Sri Lankan business. Subsequently, due to his outstanding performance, he was headhunted to Cambodia, which was the tobacco business in Cambodia, and as the head of brands. And then after that, he returned to Sri Lanka as the national sales manager. He went on to become the marketing director of Ceylon Tobacco, and I think for a 2-month period, he was also acting as the managing director. From there onwards, there was no stopping him. A graduate of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, he read for his PhD at the University of Honolulu, And then, of course, the government picked him up as the chief executive officer of the 30 billion rupee Lanka Sathosa retail outlet chain, the largest retail outlet chain with 400 outlets. And within 1 year, he turned it around for operation profit. And I think the kind of leadership he gave to 3,500 employees was something that we showed. I think that the private sector, if they are given a chance, you can turn around a state-owned enterprise. You don't need to privatize it. Then he went on to be appointed chairman of the Housing Development Finance Corporation of Sri Lanka. And today, he's the chief executive officer, executive director, Land Brewery, and Ceylon Beverage Holdings Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, an outstanding human being. Thank you so much for taking time off to talk to us. Ladies and gentlemen, Rajiv Meewakkala.
Thank you, Rohantha. Thank you very much for those kind words. When you went through that career, I was just wondering and getting back to my age. It's a long number of years. Let me start off. I've been given some areas to cover off, but I have got around 20 minutes to do this. So what I thought was I'll pick 2 areas and I'll try to elaborate a bit more in these 2 areas rather than covering off a large number of topics. So the 2 areas which I want to touch on, first of all, I'll give a very, very brief introduction. My career has spanned many companies, but most of it has been in the areas where, is termed as dark marketing. But I'll get into that and talk to you all about what this really means. I'll spend about 10 minutes talking about this, and post that, what I thought was I'll spend the other 8, around say 12 minutes on the first topic, and to about 8 minutes in terms of what I feel, right, and what I have seen when I recruit, and of how I progress my career as tips in pursuing a successful marketing career, and of how it's all emerging in the new landscape. So let me get down into dark marketing. Ladies and gentlemen, this area of dark marketing, sometimes the word which is used, darkness, right, maybe gives a bit of misrepresentation, right? How I define dark marketing is, first of all, we have to start from what this really means. The start point of this is about products, right? Of products which have got social concerns attached to it, right? Social concerns attached to it, which result in regulators bringing in restrictions, right? Bringing in restrictions in those product categories, interacting, right, with different consumers. So one clear thing is that these are not illegal categories, right? These are legal categories, but they have got certain social concerns attached to it, which result in regulators bringing in restrictions. Now, these restrictions, most of the time when we use the word dark marketing, it results in straight away the mind going into saying that, oh, this is all about advertising bans. But ladies and gentlemen, this word dark marketing brings about, therefore, misrepresentation. What it doesn't mean is that it's not about only advertising brands. It doesn't mean only about advertising brands, but it covers a spectrum, right, of different types of restrictions, right, which are brought about on, as I mentioned to you, product categories which have got social concerns, right, attached to it, brings about restrictions right through, in simplified terms, right across the marketing mix. Example, if you take certain product categories, obvious examples are tobacco and alcohol, right, which comes to your head. But what happens is that over time, as more and more awareness is created and more social awareness is created, there are a lot more product categories, right, falling into this area where there are social concerns, and thereby regulators bring in restrictions. Now, example, if you can take products which include sugar, right? There are where the regulator says you have to basically say what is the content of sugar, right? And then you have to put either a red, green, or a yellow mark. That is some sort of a restriction, right? Or some kind of awareness the regulator brings in, right? To address the social concern, which is about diabetes, for example, right? Diabetes. Then what happens is, now I'm just taking examples on sugar, right? On price, right? They bring in a sugar tax. That means more the sugar you use, higher the level of taxation. So therefore, you have to push the price up. When the price goes up, what happens? Consumers find it difficult to consume. So lower the sugar, the more affordable it becomes, right? Then what happens is that these type of restrictions, right, is also falling under this ambit of dark, of these restricted products. Restricted products don't mean only advertising, right? So that is one of the main things what we have to understand. Now, as I mentioned, alcohol and tobacco, they're obvious. Then even, for example, regulators bring in restrictions on where you can sell products, right? Where you can sell products. Now, for example, if you take alcoholic beverages, they can only be sold in licensed premises. You can't sell it all over the place, right? So that's a restriction, right? That's a restriction. Then there is a communication ban. So therefore, there is a spectrum, right, of different types of restrictions which regulators bring in these categories, which have social concerns attached to it. Now, the question is that the obvious response to this is, right, for marketing, right? Now we are mainly talking in the ambit of marketing is, let's find the loopholes, right, and work within those loopholes, right? That's the obvious route which a lot of people take. But let me tell you that is not a sustainable route, right, for companies to take. Because consumers are well aware, people become aware very quickly within a very short period of time, right? And finally, what happens is that the loopholes are shut down. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that is a very short-term, and I would call it an irresponsible approach to take. The better approach, right, is that the companies which operate within these so-called restricted areas, right, where their products come under certain restrictions, they have to operate differently, right, And that is where I firmly believe the concept of responsible marketing comes about. A lot of marketing people, right, don't sometimes think about this area. But ladies and gentlemen, in the recent past and going into the future, responsibility, right, will become a very, very important part of the way we market our products. In this whole ambit of responsible marketing, right, sometimes, right, the law will give you, right, the broad framework in which you can operate and what you can't do. But in responsible marketing, two further areas come in, which is your ethics, right, and the need to also understand societal concerns. So sometimes when you practice responsible marketing, companies which believe in absolute long-term growth have to go sometimes over and above the law and practice certain initiatives in marketing, what they do. So therefore, they may self-impose, right, certain restrictions on themselves, right, taking into consideration the societal concerns, right, and also, right, the values of the company, right, which is involving the ethics which you will practice. So therefore, I always prescribe, and I personally am a great proponent of this, is that companies have to practice responsibility, and especially in the area of marketing, responsible marketing, right? Now, when you get into this sphere of where you start working on restricted products, marketing them, a marketing organization, right, has to be a completely, they have to re-look at of how they do it versus, let's say, product categories where there are absolutely no restrictions and it is having a wide array in which you can operate. When you work within a marketing outfit which operates in this space, what you realize is there are three facets in the organization which have to be synchronized, right? One is the marketing side of it, right? Other one is the legal side of it. Thirdly, right, is the regulatory side of it. And what I mean by regulatory side of it is more the concerns which are being expressed by society at large and also by regulators. So therefore, when you arrive and when you start developing a marketing campaign, a marketing initiative in this restricted space, all these three facets have to be inbuilt, right? Inbuilt into it, right? So that you have a initiative, right? An initiative which is practiced within the law, which addresses societal concerns, as well as delivers on business goals. So you can see the type of complexity which comes in when you start operating in this space, right? In this space. So just to re-emphasize that responsibility, we must never practice short-term approaches. It must be long-term sustainable. Responsibility is an absolute, it has to be at the pinnacle of whatever we do. And the marketing approach, what we take in these spaces, involve three facets being integrated in order to ensure that you work within that ambit. Now, this is at a very, I'm giving this to you at a conceptual and at a strategic level. Now, how does this work down into more operational areas? One of the main things, right, which is very different, not very different, but I would say where more emphasis and focus comes about when you start operating in this space, right, is in the area of packaging, because there are so many different types of, the regulator prescribes so many different things to you. Sometimes you find it difficult even to communicate, right? Or even there's space, right, for your trademark. So therefore, packaging, right? Packaging design, right, becomes a very, very important part of it, right? Very, very important. And there has to be a lot of expertise and specialization in marketing teams in that regard. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is something, right, which is not given that level of emphasis, right? Sometimes, right, in organizations. And what I have seen is when FMCG people, right, operating in traditional FMCG backgrounds, move into this space where they operate within restrictions, right? They struggle in this because they find it difficult to realign their thinking about they've been given all that space to operate and all the freedoms. But when I come in here, right, how do I, right, start thinking differently? I'm giving some spaces, right, in terms of where dark marketing is a bit more different, right, to the traditional approaches what we take in FMCG categories. One area is packaging, ladies and gentlemen, right? The other area is on product development, Now, this is also very, very critical because the ingredients, what you use, right? And everything, what is being put into these type of products come under extreme scrutiny, right? So therefore, your product development teams, right, have to basically comply with the law, right? But also they have to see of how this will emerge over the next 5 years to 10 years, right? Because scrutiny will only become more as knowledge increases, right? What is going to happen is there are more and more things which will come about in terms of the ingredients. So therefore, there's a lot of forward thinking on product development, which has to take place to take this into account, right? Now, I use the word product development, right? And not mention new product development. So thirdly, the next area is new products, right? New products. Now, this is also a very, very important area where you have to pay a lot of attention, right? And these spaces which emerge come about due to certain restrictions which are emerging, right? Emerging. Now, you can see, right, in this whole different types of spaces, there are many types of products which are emerging simply due to restrictions, right? You see zero calorie, you find gluten-free, you find sugar-free, you find many types of different products, right? You find alcohol-free, right? All these different types of products which are emerging. So new product development is also a very, very important area, right? Thirdly, in this area has got restrictions. Fourthly, right, is the area of communication. Ladies and gentlemen, communication in this space, right, involves you can't talk to mass groups. You can't talk to the public at large. You can't talk to groups who are sometimes, right, who are basically large groups of non-consumers. You can't talk in certain areas, for example, you can't talk to underage consumers, right, in these certain specific product categories. So therefore, right, your only way in which you can talk to consumers is basically by micro-targeting. Micro-targeting to a level where you can't allow your message to spill over, right, to other groups, right? So that involves micro level of segmentation and micro-targeting, right? And more, the only medium which can help you in that regard is the digital space, right? But still, as I mentioned to you, all of this, right, has to operate within the area of responsibility. You can't break the law, right? And sometimes you have to go over and above the law to meet societal and ethical considerations, right? That's the fourth space. Now, in the area of distribution, there are different types of views and approaches what you can take, but there is very limited space what you can do, because if there is a restriction and a place where you can't sell, simple as that, right? So that's a bit of an area where there are things what you can do, right? But it is fairly limited. So the four areas I mentioned to you, right, which I spoke to you earlier, are some of the operational level things what so-called marketeers practice within restricted product categories, right? Restricted product categories. So that is in synopsis, right? I just want to summarize what I mentioned. Dark marketing is a bit of a misnomer where you at once your thoughts get attached to communication. It doesn't involve that only. It involves a lot of restrictions, different types of restrictions which can come about in all the 4 Ps of your marketing mix to approach and to grow in these type of spaces, right? You can either approach a short-term loophole, right, approach, or a sustainable, responsible marketing approach. So the growth agenda will be driven through more responsible marketing. In responsible marketing, right, and spaces to operate in these type of categories, 3 facets have to get integrated. One is the marketing initiative to deliver the business goals. 2, the legal aspects. 3 is the regulatory, which calls upon societal concerns. All these 3 have to come together to work, right? So after that, I touched on very simply on some examples of what marketeers practice within this whole ambit. One is in the area, very important, product development, right? Product development is very, very critical. Number 2, I spoke to you about new product development, which is also very, very important. And thirdly, I also spoke about this area where communication, yes, but it has to be micro-targeting. And that involves, very importantly, the only way you can do that is through in the digital space, right? But still you have to practice these responsibly, and you have to be ethical, and you have to meet societal considerations. So that, let me stop there, right? As I just sort of touched on this whole area of dark marketing. Next, what I thought was, I'll take the next, let's say, 5 to 8 minutes and talk about what I feel, right, are some of the critical areas and tips to pursue a successful marketing career. And this is coming from my personal experience, which I've gone through now close to about 35 years in marketing, right? In marketing and now into general management. What I personally feel that some of the key success factors are, and also of how marketing is evolving, First of all, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of young people I have seen, right, out of university doing sim, there is this natural feel, right, that they want to get into the more, how could I call it, the more attractive and the more sexy areas of marketing, which is the brand side, right? The brand side. And there is a general tendency where they look at, and they feel that that is the area where they get attracted to. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, yes, brand management and understanding is good. But what I have realized is that to have a successful marketing career, the best place, right? Now, in my case, I took a different approach, but from what I have learned in hindsight and what I have seen with young people is that it's important, right, to start your early days of your marketing career on the field, right? Because that is where you understand, right, ground level reality. You start getting your hands dirty, right? You start doing the hard work, which you don't see when you're in head office doing all strategy and the fancy marketing campaigns. Sometimes what happens is that brand managers who don't have this type of understanding find it very, very difficult. They come up with campaigns sometimes which you can't execute on the field, right? So the first thing, right? First thing is that a very important part, right, of a successful marketing career is do your work and do your stints on the field, right? And there is no doubt that it will pay dividends in the future. But at the same time, remember, right, too long in the field, right, too long in the field also, right, causes you to get stifled out, because then sometimes you get into a stage where you become so execution focused, right? So execution focused, your mind gets trained to that, right? And you find it difficult, right, to have a look at the broader picture and some of the strategy, right, and the bigger brand ideas, right, which come about. So what I'm saying is, you need to start off, you need to build on it, but too long periods, right, result in you sometimes, right, finding it difficult to move within the career. Next area, what I want to mention is the fact of brand management. Now, in most companies, how I see it is, brand management, we need to break it up into two facets. One is brand strategy, the other one is brand execution. Gentlemen and ladies, brand strategy is very different to brand execution, let me tell you. Brand strategy is where you basically set up, right, the basic persona of your brand, the values your brand will epitomize, right, and the type of expression the brand, right, will carry through your different touch points. Now, that is brand strategy, right? Defining your brand of what it stands for. Right? Now, this is a very, very important skill set, right? Now, the brand execution side of it is, after that is set up, is how do you execute that? That means through your marketing campaigns, like your advertising campaigns, your let's call it your packaging, your different point of sale. How do you execute? Now, most of the time, right, what I have seen is people, right, and especially brand managers, right, they tend to get caught up in this brand execution area. Brand execution area. And when they have to progress to the next levels, there is this huge question mark and that huge gap which comes about, where their brand strategy part, right, is not solid, right? And this is something which I grapple a lot with when it comes to moving people up in their marketing careers. They are very, very good at running campaigns and executing. But as you go up the organizational ladder, what happens is that you need to be able, right, to have a bit more development and a bit more stronger view on the strategic side of the business, right? So brand strategy is also an important facet for people to acquire. And I've seen that as a major gap. And I find it extremely difficult to recruit brand managers, because when you start asking questions on, what does your brand stand for? How do you do it? What is the process you follow in terms of developing your brand? They struggle. But you tell them, how do you run an advertising campaign? They'll tell you from A to Z, right? So that's another facet, right, which I have picked up. So field, right, your sales background, your brand strategy is another area which comes about. And thirdly, right, is the evolving landscape. Is more and more, right, technology is being infused into marketing, right, into all facets. People talk about digital, right? Digital is just one part of this whole game. Now, technology is all over in marketing, right? From consumer research, understanding consumers, right, on packaging, right, on packaging, then in terms of your the different types of communication materials, the whole facet, technology is changing. And now people are getting more also into this whole area of artificial intelligence. So marketing technology, now they call it MarTech, is also third area where new generation marketers, right, have to grapple and have to get a decent understanding. And let me again say that this is just not people what they call digital marketing. That is just communication. This involves a much more broader spectrum of technologies which cut across the different types of marketing processes. Finally, to end up, right, the next skill, right, which marketers and who want to pursue big careers, right, move from marketing into general management, is as they go up to a certain level, they need to start understanding other business functions, right? How does supply chain work? A lot of sometimes brand managers, you ask them about a product, they are looking up and down. They don't know. They don't know what ingredients go in. They only know what the communication side of it is. You need to start, right, understanding other functions and other areas of the business and becoming more and more financial, right, commercially oriented, right? That's the business acumen which you have to take on. If people I have seen very successful, right, in their marketing careers are people who have had solid sales backgrounds, right? Strong brand strategy, right? Knowledge and experience. Thirdly, have an appreciation, right? You don't need to be a technology specialist, but you need to appreciate technology, right? Very, very good. Now, sometimes we made some certain decisions we have never done this before, but we made experiments of taking people from tech companies in as brand managers, just to see, because this is the evolving landscape. Technology, right? You need to appreciate it, right? You don't need to be a specialist, but you need to appreciate it and you need to know what is happening out there. Finally, is the business acumen, right? Which is the broader business areas. So that's it from me, ladies and gentlemen. I have spoken about dark marketing and touched on some experiences, right, I have had in terms of pursuing a successful marketing career. So that's it from me. Happy to answer questions in the next couple of minutes. And let me pass you on to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, and fantastic. I mean, I was taking some notes down while you were speaking, actually. Thank you very much. I mean, a whole heap of questions are coming in. Let me just take a few of them. First question that they ask is, what did you learn, I mean, after being successful in handling brands in Sri Lanka, and when you went to Cambodia, to handle brands, what was the key learning that you picked up over there?
One of the key things is that, you see, is the cultural differences, right? One of the main things is that sometimes when you move across markets, right? When you move across markets, being culturally empathetic, right? And understanding the cultural differences become very, very critical for marketers, right? And that is one of the main things, right? Especially because when you start thinking about the type of brands, and the type of communication, the different types of personas, what you want to do, you have to take the lens out, right? Which you have been stuck with in your domestic market. And when you move to this area, that becomes extremely critical to have that cultural empathy and understanding, right? Which you have to have. So that is one of the main takeouts which I have had in doing this, because that understanding, the deep understanding of that culture becomes very, very critical, right? In setting up your whole marketing effort.
But once you handled brands in Sri Lanka and in Cambodia, what made you come to Sri Lanka back and then join sales as a head of sales? I mean, isn't that a situation where you felt that, now I need to move up, but then I'm taking a internally a cross posting kind of a thing? How did that pan out, Rajiv?
Actually, Rohantha, now this is why I actually spoke about earlier. I personally think I was a bit too late at the time I got into sales, right? I got into sales, right? But it was never too late, the best part is to start early on in your career. But I knew that if I had to progress, right, and to become a marketing director and sometimes, progress beyond that into general management, that the sales, right, this whole thing on sales, I have to get it, right? Now, at that time, yes, I was at a senior level in the organization, and what I basically requested the organization is I want to go to the field, right? I want to work on the field. I want to see, and I want to get the touch and feel of how execution at sales level takes place. Now, that was one of the main things, right? What I personally felt that if I don't do it then, right, and I took another brand role, I will get stuck in that space and I will never be able to pursue my ambition of moving into the space of heading marketing and sales and becoming a marketing director.
Rajiv, given your this kind of a background, you took a strategic decision in terms of serving government.
Yeah.
And everybody tells, don't join the government, it's very difficult to work. How come, you were able to do things which a lot of people said it's tough to work when you started working in Lanka Sathosa? What is your pickup there?
Wanta, I took this break, right, from the private sector. This is also part and parcel of, I think, my view, my personal sort of personal interest in getting a wide array of experience. You see, the fundamental difference I see when I went into a place like Lanka Sathosa, then I did some crazy postings. I did Lanka Sathosa, then I was also chairman of a construction company of Sri Lanka's State Development Construction Corporation, and then, of course, of a bank. Now, in these organizations, compared to the private sector, what you realize is that the multitude of stakeholders you have to work with, right, in order to execute successfully is mind-boggling, right? They involve people within the organization. Then you have the political hierarchy, and then you have got the administrative hierarchy within ministries. All of these, right, have to be managed, right? You can be at the highest level of the organization, but if you don't successfully manage this equilibrium between these three, parties, right, you can't be successful, right? Now, that's the single learning which I got out of my stint, is that versus the private sector, what happens is when you're a CEO, you make a call, right? You make a call, and as long as it's a decent commercial call, you answer to the board, and that's it. Right? Here, you have to answer to so many people, and that you have to get them all aligned, right? If you are to make any type of change or make anything of a significant change really count. So this is something which I personally view as a learning for me, right? And now what I have realized is when I come back into the private sector, and now when I have to still deal with government bodies and entities, it gives me a very, very good idea of how do I work, right? At what level do I need to engage in order to get things done or to get forward movement? So that experience which I got from working in the state sector is playing dividends for me now, right? Because the role which I play also involves a lot of interactions with government entities and bodies.
Rajiv, there's a good question coming. With all your skill in the private and the public sector, and now, of course, post-economic crisis, how do you see Sri Lanka panning out in the next 1 year?
Ranta, I'm a bit of an optimist, right? Because I think this country, whatever said and done, this country has resilience. This country is resilient. Why is it resilient, right? Because what I feel is, we are not talking of a economy the size of India, Right? We're a small country. The space of geographically we are small. The economy is also small, right? And whatever said and done within a very short span of time, without any type of political affiliations, some level of progress has been achieved. Right? Some level of progress has been achieved. Now, what do I see as a silver lining in all of this? I personally is that I feel tourism, right, is the silver lining we have got in this. And I'm optimistic that this is going to come about in the next 1 year, right? And we should push this agenda very, very strongly, right? And also in the next couple of months, I think it'll take maybe a bit longer than a couple of months, maybe close to 6 months, when the interest rates are also coming down, you will see, right? You will see industries, coming back. You'll see private credit growth going up. You see some level of growth taking place, although albeit be slow, right? Put all of this together, I feel that by the end of the year, beginning of next year, you will see, right, some sort of forward movement, right, in the economy. So one approach is you absolutely become a pessimist, right, and say, therefore, I'm not going to do anything, right? I'm just going to take a very pessimistic view of this country. Now, if everyone does that, you're actually contributing, right, in some way, right, to the demise of this country. So I think as business leaders and business people, we have to be optimistic, but of course, manage the risk, right, in whatever commercial decisions what we take, and move forward, right, within these constraints. So I'm a bit of an optimist on this one.
Very good question coming up. It says, we who are studying for the master's program, we are sandwiched between high interest costs, have to pay electricity bills at 300% the current cost. And we have also taken a loan for our houses, which has now doubled. And now the latest is that the money that we pay to the EPF is also having a cut because of domestic reasons. So the question is, what is your advice to a youngster like me?
Well, it's not, Rwanda, to be very honest, it's not only the youngster. I have also had a 40% drop in my income in the last year, right? So it's this, right, guys? I personally, my advice is, right, let's be resilient, right, and be patient. It is never a downward hill continuously. Never, right? There is never a downward hill continuously. There is always that place by which you bottom out and you start improving. And when things improve, right, things start also having an improvement in your personal lives. Now, the same thing is, you're absolute pessimist, right? Sometimes you have to make changes in your lifestyle. Right? I have made personal changes in my lifestyle, right? Now, sometimes I used to go out very frequently. Now, it is maybe once a week, right? So we have to, we can't say all these things. We can keep on blaming, right? But what does blaming really take you? Anywhere. It doesn't, right? Because the only thing is you're getting more frustrated inside you, right? And nothing happens. So isn't it better that, yes, right? I'm not saying what has been done is right? I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, let's play within the constraints. There's nothing else what anyone, you, me, anyone can do, right? We have to alter our lifestyle in some shape and form. We have to see this through, right? We have to see this through. There is no other way, right? But at the same time, I'm not saying what has happened is right. It's hurting me also. But I can keep on complaining. I can keep on scolding. I can go out there and, do whatever, right? But what is going to take place? It's better for me do some changes to my lifestyle, to the way I do things, accept some of these constraints, right? wait, right, for period where things will come back. And at that time, you also will have certain benefits accruing to you. So that's, although it may sound a bit stupid, but that's all what we can do within these constraints.
Gentlemen, one of the top business personalities of Sri Lanka, someone whom I have a lot of respect for, Dr. Rajiv Meewakkala. Thank you so much for taking your time off, and it's lovely talking to you. Ruth, over to you, please.
Thank you, Dr. Rajiv, for being with us on the platform. You've shared quite a lot of knowledge today, and I'm sure the students have logged in, joined the session, and everybody has truly benefited from everything you have shared with us. So as we draw to a close, I'd like to thank all our students, our industry partners, and anybody who has joined into this session. Thank you for joining in. I'd like to thank our IT team for the technical support extended. And before we wrap up, I'd like to inform everybody that APID has a newly launched MSc in Marketing Management. So that's something for you to think about if you want to upskill. So till we meet again with another interesting topic, I'd like to wish everybody a good day, a good afternoon, and a good evening from wherever you're joining in.